In 1961, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby would begin working on a new comic series. Little did they know, this story about four people who are showered with cosmic radiation would become a cultural phenomenon and usher in the Marvel Silver Age of comics. In this episode of Tony's Comic Spotlight, the spotlight shines on Fantastic Four issue number 1. As our story opens, a crowd of people see a message in the sky, simply saying the Fantastic Four. Even the police are puzzled at what these 3 words mean. Nearby, we see a strange figure holding a flare gun. He says, "It is the first time I have found it necessary to give a signal. I pray it will be the last." In another part of town, Susan Storm is having tea with a friend when her friend looks out the window and sees the message. Hearing her friend's commotion and knowing what the message means, Susan turns invisible and leaves. Our attention is turned to a men's clothing store where a tall, hulking figure in a large coat, hat, and glasses is trying in vain to get some new clothes that unfortunately the tailor has nothing in his size. The tailor notices and remarks about the message in the sky, and the figure sheds his disguise and leaves the startled tailor. In another part of town, young Johnny is having his car worked on when the mechanic notices the same message in the sky. Johnny instantly turns into flames and rockets skyward to his destination. On the way there, he is met with some fighter jets who try to shoot him down, but he's able to disable the jets and the pilots are able to parachute away. Once the 3 individuals meet the man who sent the message, he tells them that a fearful task awaits them. Our story now flashes back in time as we see the origin of the Fantastic Four. We travel back to the day where an angry Ben Grimm confronts Dr. Reed Richards. Ben has no interest in piloting a ship into space because he's fearful that the gamma rays may affect him, may be harmful to them. Susan talks Ben into piloting the ship, and the 4 individuals go to the spaceport on the outskirts of town. They sneak past the guards and they jump in the ship and it rockets skyward. They succeed in their mission to become the first humans in space, but the ship is bombarded by cosmic rays, just as Ben had feared. The autopilot takes over and sends them back to Earth and crashes. As the 4 individuals emerge from the cockpit, disoriented, Reed is fearful at what the cosmic rays may have done to them. Sue remarks that she feels so strange, and the other 3 are startled to see her disappear. Ben and Reed start to argue again when Ben transforms into a giant orange rock-like monster. He picks up a tree and tries to swat Reed with it, but Reed stretches out of the way and then wraps his body around Ben. At this moment, Johnny transforms into flames and is ecstatic that he can fly. At this moment, the 4 decide to use their new powers to help mankind, picking code names. Johnny calls himself the Human Torch, Susan calls herself the Invisible Girl, Ben calls himself the Thing, and Reed calls himself Mr. Fantastic, and thus the Fantastic Four is born. We return to the present where Reed shows the team pictures taken of an atomic plant that has been destroyed. There's a giant hole in the ground, and this atomic plant was behind the Iron Curtain. He also follows up with pictures of atomic plants in Australia and South America. Using his radar machine, Reed is able to pinpoint the next attack, which is in French Africa. The entire installation collapses into the ground, and the soldiers are surprised to see a gigantic green monster being controlled by a small man. The monster crushes a tank with one hand, and after hearing the voice of his master, the mole man, the 2 leave. By studying the cave-ins, Reed is able to pinpoint an island that is between 2 of the installations that were attacked. The team fly to this island known as Monster Isle and are ambushed shortly after landing by a 3-headed monster. Reed is able to lasso one of the heads and throw it into the ocean, but the ground collapses underneath him and Johnny and they both disappear. Floating down into a dark pit, the 2 are blinded by a bright light and they lose consciousness. When they awake, they discover that the source of the light that blinded them was a valley filled with diamonds, and a figure walks out and introduces himself as the Mole Man. Meanwhile, back on the surface, Susan is almost attacked by another monster, but is saved by Ben. They run off to find Reed and Johnny, who are prisoners of the Mole Man. The Mole Man tells them he once lived on the surface world, but after being constantly mocked by people, he left, looking for a way to find the legendary center of the earth. After a long search, he finds a cavern, and excited that he has succeeded in finding the center of the earth, the Mole Man accidentally triggers an avalanche. He survives the fall, but due to the impact from the fall, he had lost most of his sight and was stranded there like a human mole. He took over as the leader of the creatures that were living there and began carving out his underground empire. His plan is to destroy every atomic plant, every source of earthly power. Then his mole creatures would come onto the surface and kill every living thing there. Mole Man summons the gigantic green monster to dispatch the heroes, but the Human Torch is able to distract the monster long enough for Mr. Fantastic to capture the Mole Man, and as they're trying to leave, the Mole Man's minions are trying to stop them, but the Human Torch comes between them and blasts a pathway all the way up to the surface world. During the ensuing run to the surface, the Mole Man escapes, and he triggers an explosion in destroying Monster Isle as the heroes leave, sealing him off from the surface world. Whether or not he lives is unknown at that time, and Reed says that he's better off where he's at. And the team flies off, and the story ends. Some interesting facts about the creation of the first issue of Fantastic Four was at the time, in the early part of 1961, the head of Atlas Comics, or I guess it was Marvel by that time, by the name of Martin Goodwin, was playing golf with one of the senior people of National Publications, or DC Comics. And this guy was bragging about the success that they'd had with their team, the Justice League of America. So he went back to his offices and he instructed Stan to come up with their own team of superheroes. At this point, Stan had been in comics for 20 years. He always wanted to be a novelist. He didn't really want to write what he perceived as funny books, but he kept, writing stories. And during this time, due to what happened with the whole seduction of the innocent case, most comic companies steered away from superhero type books, and they started doing books based on Western, sci-fi, romance, horror, and whatnot. But Stan felt like the stories that he wanted to contribute really didn't fit those genres, and he really wanted to do a superhero comic book because those were the stories that inspired him. And he was just becoming tired of working on comics and was actually getting ready to leave when Martin approached him with this. And I believe it was his wife Joan that persuaded him to, if he really gonna get out of comics for good, that he should write one story the way he always wanted to write it, and let that be the end of it. Now he got with Jack Kirby, and they created the Fantastic Four, and the book was a huge success. And if it hadn't have been for the Fantastic Four, if Stan would have quit, we would have never seen the Hulk or Iron Man or Spider-Man or Thor or the Avengers or even the X-Men. That's an interesting what if right there. But those are just some of the facts that are some of the things that I found interesting about that led up to the creation of the Fantastic Four. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Tony's Comic Spotlight. I really enjoyed going back and looking at the first issue of the Fantastic Four. If you're enjoying the video and the content of the channel, please give us a like and subscribe. I'm working on trying to get 100 subscribers, and I'm going to do some kind of a giveaway. I'm also going to leave some links down in the description below of some other YouTube channels that you should give a sub and check out their content as well. So until next time, I'll see you later.